Hello and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone is doing well. Today I have 4 true ghost stories from the Haunted Canada series. If I pronounce anything wrong, I do apologize. A Haunting Melody, Edmonton, Alberta. A legend about another invisible organ player persists at the University of Alberta in Edmonton. But this phantom musician didn't play only one note, and didn't just play one time either. Its instrument of choice was the War Memorial organ installed after World War I in the university's original Convocation Hall, to honor individuals from the university who lost their lives during both the First and Second World Wars. Their names are listed on plaques at the hall's entrance. Perhaps an invisible organist also wanted to honor the war dead. It's rumored that night after night during World War II, the organ played taps, the haunting 24-note melody heard at American military funerals and memorial services, and at informal Canadian services too. But there was no one to be seen anywhere near the keyboard when it did. A spirited performance, Upder Grove, Ontario. By contrast, the ghostly organist at St. Clumkills Church of Upder Grove near Orillia had no problem with being visible. He was even dressed for the occasion when he gave a brief recital in late March of 1964, more than 40 years later. Susan Wallace could still clearly remember how he looked and how upset she was when she saw him. Wallace and her 2 sisters were helping their mother and another woman clean the church just before Easter. A mysterious, white-faced figure, all dressed in black and wearing a top hat, appeared in the choir loft. He sat down at the organ and began to play. Worried that the stranger might be up to no good, her mother and the other woman climbed the stairs to ask him what he was doing there. When they reached the loft, he backed away without answering and entered the bell tower room, letting the door to it swing close after him. The 2 women followed him, but were completely taken aback to find that the small windowless room was empty. The door they had just come through was the only way in and out of the room, and the white-faced man hadn't gone past them. He had simply disappeared. Dining with the Dead, Vancouver, British Columbia. Old buildings sometimes have strange tales to tell. The Century Inn and Bar, which opened in 2006, is an elegant restaurant on Richard Street near Pender Avenue in downtown Vancouver. It's located in Century House, a classic heritage building constructed in 1911 as a Canada Permanent Mortgage Bank. After the bank closed in 1951, several other businesses set up shop there, including an insurance company, a trade school, a bookstore, and another fine restaurant. Sean Sherwood, the owner of the latest restaurant, personally supervised the restoration and remodeling of the building. But there were times when he felt some otherworldly spirit was also keeping a ghostly eye on what was happening. Occasionally, when he was the only one in the place, he would hear mysterious laughter and haunting footsteps. He also got cell phone calls from what he believed was a female ghost. What's more, a carpenter reported seeing a strange woman in old-fashioned clothes walking around the place. When he asked her to leave, she gave him such a scary look that he left instead, and wouldn't work in the building alone after that. Other workers also sensed the ghostly presence of a woman, and since the restaurant opened, some servers and diners have been disturbed by the sounds of a woman crying in an empty washroom stall. Sherwood was aware of rumors that Century House was haunted when he finalized plans to open his new restaurant there. He'd heard the tale of how decades ago a female clerk was shot at the bank, either during a robbery or by her enraged husband. No one seems to have verified the story, but if it's true, could it be, or the murdered woman's spirit is the otherworldly presence lingering in Century House? The Phantom Train, Medicine Hat, Alberta. In 1908, Bob Toohey was working as a railway engineer on the Canadian Pacific Railway line in Alberta. He had a wife and children to support in Medicine Hat. One night in May, he was at the cab of a train rolling along just south of there when a blinding light suddenly appeared in front of him. The closer it came, the more terrified Toohey became, realizing that another locomotive was speeding toward him. He was about to shout to Gus Day, the fireman working with him, to jump, but at that moment the collision-bound train, its whistle blaring, swerved to the right and raced past his train into the darkness, its passengers waving from the windows. Toohey had no idea what had just happened. A train couldn't possibly have passed his. There was just one track on the part of the line, and his engine and cars were still on it. Figuring his imagination must have been playing tricks on him, he decided to say nothing today. He was troubled enough by the frightening experience that he asked to be allowed to do work around the railway yards for a while. It wasn't until a couple of weeks later that he screwed up the courage to talk to Day, and was both amazed and realized to learn that Day had seen the Phantom Train too. In June of that same year, Day was again working as a fireman aboard another train, heading to Lethbridge. Jim Nicholson, a friend of Toohey's, was the engineer driving the train that night. And to Day's horror, in almost the exact same spot, just a few kilometers outside Medicine Hat, the ghost train reappeared. Once again, its headlight grew brighter and its whistle sounded louder as it approached. And once again it swerved off just in time to avoid a deadly collision. Day said nothing to Nicholson about his near crash with a train that couldn't possibly exist, but he began to wonder if he, like Toohey, should take a break from the rails. It was just by chance that Day was given a yard assignment in Medicine Hat on July 8th, 1908. That's where he was when he and other workers got some terrible news about a derailment just a few kilometers outside town. A passenger train traveling east had been nearly 2 hours late leaving Lethbridge. This was a vital piece of information for the engineer driving a locomotive south to Dunmore Junction to pick up the luxury cars of the Spokane Flyer. If he had paid attention to the Lethbridge train's new expected arrival time in Medicine Hat, he would have delayed his train's departure from the Hat. But somehow he missed that information, and his error proved deadly. The two locomotives met headlong, killing 7 members of the train's crews and 2 passengers. When more details about the terrible accident reached the rail yards, Gus Day's mind was sent reeling, first with grief and then with horror. He was grief-stricken when he heard that the crash had claimed the lives of 4 of his fellow workers. 2 had been good friends, Bob Toohey and Jim Nicholson. Toohey had been the engineer on the train from Lethbridge, and Nicholson had been the other locomotive's engineer. Day was also horrified to learn that the crash had happened in the very same place as the 2 earlier encounters with the ghost train. Thank you for listening. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing and liking my channel, and I will see you on the next one.